having me this morning. I'm usually not a morning person because I have crazy hours. I'll take calls at 3 a.m. with my nightclub team, and then I'll have 9 a.m.s with my brunch team. But it's refreshing to be here, and against my cardiologist's wish, I had coffee this morning. So, but I do want to start by kind of writing off of the 99.9%. I'd like to officially call Steve the ghost pepper killer as his 0.1% because that rap was awesome. But I kind of want, before I jump into it, for everyone to think of a dish. Whether it's spicy, whether it's something from childhood, whether it's something you've had abroad. I just want you to think of a memory that you've had, a bite that you've had. It doesn't have to be super fancy. It doesn't have to be super crazy. It can just be a cherished childhood memory, whatever that is. I want that to marinate in your mind a little bit. And we're going to go back to it a little bit later in my conversation. So, with that being said, my name is Ron. I am a second-generation Chinese American. I guess my story really starts with my parents because I wouldn't be here without them. And a lot of it is, as we kind of progress, I'll premise it by saying my life when looking back on it, which is weird because I actually don't think I do that too often. It's not until I get opportunities like this where I sit down and I have to actually look to see things that I've done and I go, whoa, that's kind of crazy. But there's a lot of kind of just spicy, provocative, sudden changes, which is counterintuitive as a business owner because preparation and kind of being responsible in terms of finances and people around you are important. But I've kind of started piecing together points in my life, and it almost feels like they've been light switches and very sudden, and that's kind of brought me to where I am. But back to 1988, that was the year that I was born in Manhattan, New York. My father was a product of the political situation in China, but he was given an opportunity to come abroad. He was a scholar and eventually was studying for his doctorate at New York University. My mother followed, and she was in nursing. And I think a lot of this is really important because the first 8 years of my life, I actually don't remember much. I have some core memories, but my parents were immigrant. They were, students by day, delivering Chinese food at night, hotel maid for my mom, and I was raised by my grandparents, which I think now as an adult I'm super grateful because I am fluent in Mandarin for that reason, because my grandparents didn't speak English, and at home I had the Mandarin kind of experience, and then obviously in school I kind of had the English experience, but I also didn't really have birthday parties. I didn't really have, I had a neighbor that was a friend, but a lot of it was this almost like blissful, happy childhood, but not with a lot of social interaction. And then the first light switch kind of happened. My father and my mom, they graduated, they got their first careers, and I suddenly now was moved from a one-bedroom apartment in Brooklyn to a cul-de-sac, upper middle class, suburban neighborhood, and it was dramatic and drastic. And on the first day in the neighborhood, I had 5 kids and neighbors show up, and suddenly for 9 years of my life, I didn't really have a friend, and suddenly I had 5 within 24 hours. And that was the first light switch. And I think that kind of, I guess in retrospect, it's a bit of a culture shock, started becoming a little bit of a theme in a lot of things in my life. So as I kind of now made the switch and adjustment from, being the city kid that just kind of went to school and went home, I was in all the academic programs, and that was really it. Now in the suburbs, I was living in a neighborhood. We were playing cops and robbers and baseball and sports and all these things that were thrown to me and suddenly activated this desire to want to be social. And as as I kind of continue to progress, this is where a lot of my memories kind of started forming. I think a lot of my personal development started happening because I also ran into issues of identity. I think being Asian American and, I think having a little bit of a dearth of social interaction made me kind of really have to figure things out on the fly, developing as a 4th, 5th grader, which, I think a lot of people start developing as a kindergartner. But with that being said, I did have struggles, but then a lot of those struggles led into I think some identity issues. I think I was going through kind of mental health issues, trying to figure out who I was. And I know everyone kind of has their own version of it, but for me, I started kind of looking for ways to figure out who I was as a person, and then suddenly the next light switch happened. I was suddenly moved from public school to private school. I think my parents must have sensed that I was losing focus. I wasn't really finding kind of joy in a lot of things that they were signing me up for. But then this sudden light switch kind of put me in a new environment, and I hit a growth spurt. I think I went from like 5'8" to 6'1", and suddenly at the new school, the basketball coach is going, "Listen, you got to be on the team." And I was thrown into this new environment, and suddenly new group of friends, and it just kind of changed 180. I think suddenly my development and being a boss and trying to find myself was thrust into another arena. My situation completely changed. And I think it kind of made me grow in a different way. And suddenly I coincidentally met other peers that were Asian American. I grew up in a not so diverse neighborhood. And I think that light switch suddenly just activated something new. All of a sudden I'm, having fun. I'm socializing. Things are coming a little bit easier. My grades are picking up, and a lot of things started to click. And I think that was a pivotal moment in my life in which I started actually gaining confidence. I think for the longest time, I felt like I was just floating through life and did what you had to do, right? Like, get up, be a good kid, you have your angst as a teenager, as anyone would. But I think I really started finding myself. And then next thing I knew, I went from this like shy, introverted kid that just went home after school to being active and a tri-varsity athlete. Go figure. I don't know how that happened, but I guess genetics did help me a little bit. But with that kind of being said, I went to college. Another dramatic instance that happened was I was rejected by my safety school, the University of Connecticut. And a month later, they then did a 180 and sent me a full ride scholarship with honors program. I still don't know what happened to this day. The admissions officer claimed she didn't do anything, and it was an administrative error. But I just had, again, like such a sudden impact and dramatic change in my life, like out of nowhere. But I ended up attending, and suddenly I found myself in a group with a lot more Asian Americans and the African American community and the Puerto Rican Latin American community. I was on a public university campus with so much diversity and kind of freedom, and I think I kind of just started flipping on a bunch of light switches once I got there. And instead of just getting in and going, okay, I'm going to be a student, I was a business school student, and I guess part of it is, they try to breed you to think outside the box and be unconventional. But then I kind of took it a step further. I just started doing things. Like as a freshman, I founded a fraternity that focused on Asian American identity and empowerment. I created a fashion show with some friends because we're like, well, Asian fashion is really cool. So we just got together, talked to some professors and said, we want to do this thing. How do we make this happen? And I just found myself kind of just like doing things now. And it wasn't so scary anymore. And it kind of was exciting and unknown and just why the heck not. And the next thing came into an opportunity where a friend was like, hey, you ever thought about student government? Let me introduce you to someone. And 2 weeks later, I was elected to represent 800 students. And I think from there, that's when I kind of really settled in and went, man, you can just do stuff in this world and kind of be a little bit fearless, right? Like, I think I grew up so in such a traditional household, and I don't blame my parents because education is what gave me the opportunity, right? That was what allowed them to leave their country, academics and studying and being a good employee and kind of fitting the box, if you will. Keep your head down, don't cause any trouble. But I was here, and that's how I was raised. That's why I was incredibly introverted. But these light switches just kept showing up in front of me, these opportunities, and I think I just started fearlessly flipping them all on because I was having fun. I was just looking for opportunities. And I think that's where, you talk about cooking, you talk about spice. I think all that buildup were the ingredients. And I think this part of my life is where I started taking a lot of these ingredients and going, man, I can make dishes with these, but it doesn't have to be the same dish. It doesn't have to be even a dish that exists. I can put my own version on it. I can kind of have fun and innovate and try a different spice that isn't conventional. And if it turns out awful, who cares after a while, right? Just people forget, but people remember the cool stuff you do. And I think I've really started embracing that a lot. And carrying that into the professional side, it's funny because I still feel like everything is a whirlwind. Like most of the time, it's funny. I'll make a football reference. I don't know how many NFL fans, but I always consider like myself like a Le'Veon Bell runner. Like I'm running full speed. I get up to the line and just kind of go. I feel kind of blind, but everything slows down. I just pick one spot and just go. I might get hit. I might fall, or I might score a touchdown, and we get to keep going. So that's kind of been my style a lot. And so with graduation around the corner, this was kind of reckless. I wasn't thinking about my career after graduation. I walked into a career fair in my pajamas because my roommate said, "Hey, listen, they're giving out a lot of cool swag. Like there's hoodies and pencils and chip bag, clip save." I was like, "All right, I'll come along." I met someone who didn't care how I was dressed. We had a great conversation, and within 24 hours, he put a job offer in my hand. Selling chocolate. It was for the Hershey company. I was like, this is awesome. Another light switch. All right, like corporate, sure, why not? It's candy. It's fun. And once I got in there, I kind of brought that same energy, the why not energy. So even though I had a role that I played, a lot of things I would do, I do some design work, so I would put together reports that didn't exist and talk about opportunities where I was working across the board. I was working with your blue collar stalker, minimum wage, up to the Walmart manager that oversees 160 stores. But I would just throw stuff out there like, hey, we got an Easter thing. It's not really company policy, but I got an idea. If I put together this decor thing, I'll throw some numbers together, and I convinced big kind of corporate chains to let me have fun, within a corporate confine. I got to build displays. I got to do things that were completely outside the box. But I think my boss kind of knew before long. I was already working on some other stuff, outside work. I didn't just go to work every day and kind of do my thing. I would get off at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock. I was working on stuff at night. I had a friend who similar, energy as me. He graduated from Cambridge University with a grad degree and decided I'm not going to take any job offer. I'm going to live in my aunt's basement for a year or two to figure things out. So we started messing around, and actually that kind of has led to my first exposure here at CIC. We launched a freaking tech startup with no experience, and I recruited a friend who was a brilliant developer, another friend who eventually had a great DJ career, and she was a model, and we tried to compete with DoorDash back in 2013. Put out an MVP, completely failed, but we met a lot of people. We got a chance to kind of go to events and meet, and just freaking have fun. So all that energy really kind of culminated into, and it's funny because I haven't talked about food or restaurants at all since it had nothing to do with that, but it kind of led to that. My wife is my partner, and I've high school sweethearts actually, which is weird to say out loud. And we survived opening restaurants together. But she was a geneticist at Brigham and Women's, incredibly intelligent, complete opposite of me, incredibly clinical, incredibly bright and hardworking. I'm just pretty one that takes the credit. That's what I tell everyone. But I brought her on and we flipped the light switch together. I made a call to a development that was happening at UConn. They wanted to, they got approved by the state, $200 million development. They were going to turn this campus from a farm town to a national university downtown. Random call, immediately we got hit back, and we had no clue what we were doing. There is no restaurant experience in either of our families. I had worked in a restaurant before. I lasted 3 hours in each before I got let go. ironically. But they called back and said, sure, what do you guys want to do? Like, comfort food, street food, like we wanted to bring our Asian, she's Cambodian American, I'm Chinese American. We wanted just to kind of cook for fun and do a little cafe. We always thought campus, was pizza and wings and burgers and, the same stuff. And we had no idea, first of all, how difficult the industry was. I think it was there's a saying where, we don't do this because it's easy. We did this because we didn't know it was this hard. But we didn't know at the time that it was a PR story for them. Local alumni, recent young alumni believe in this project. So they gave us a lease. They gave us a build out. They trusted us to kind of make it, and they supported us along the way. And there was so much luck involved that we had no clue. We were behind schedule. We ran into all the headaches of actually constructing a restaurant. But we kind of fought through it because we just said, well, this is what we committed. Let's just keep running. Let's just keep going. And that's kind of really what brought, and today, 11 restaurants sounds daunting, and I'll say half of them were kind of us blindly running into something. The first restaurant we opened, man, we did not know how hard it was going to be. Without exaggeration, I think it was roughly 100 to 108 hour work weeks in the first 3 months. I remember days where we would wake up at 8 a.m. and look at each other and go, we're posting on Facebook, we're not open today, we can't move our bodies. But we had a supportive community, I think we had supportive staff, and so how do we go from 1 to 11? Where did all those light switches come from? I would love to say it was because, we were crushing it and we were so prepared and we were scaling, but no, I played pickup basketball after work and I met some rich kids that said, hey, we really like what you do. Here's like $200K, would you open another one? Me going, sure, let's figure this out. And that's what happened. We opened another restaurant recklessly without a lawyer to review the contract agreement. All really silly things, but I think that was the theme, right? The theme is what opportunity indoors kind of, what light switches jump in front, and we're going to flip them. Of course, we're a little bit more organized, a little bit more responsible these days, but that whirlwind has really kind of defined a lot of where I am today. And not everything's been great. Some of these light switches, and we'll call it, bring it back to the whole spice theme. Some hurt really bad. We've been sued. We've been picketed and protested by contractors, and ran into so many things that we just had to get through. But I think that was the big thing. That was having the faith that this light might be dim right now, but there's always light. There's always another tunnel. There's always switches. I think the biggest thing is the people around you are so important, and we're grateful because that's something we never take for granted. But where we are today is a culmination of, I think, being a little bit reckless, a little bit fearless, but this willingness to just go and explore and do it. Obviously, risk is always a thing, and what I tell people is, ironically, when people do come to me, advise potential clients and people that ask me about restaurants, my best piece of advice I can give them is don't do it. I honestly think that is the best piece of advice, but here's the thing: if you've really thought it through, if you're ready for the risks, just know that once you're in, just put your head down and go, because it's going to work out. You will find a way, you will meet people along the way, luck will come, hard work is going to pay off, and no matter how dark and the dips and the valleys are, there's always going to be people rooting for you. It may not feel like it when you can't see the mountain peak from the trenches, but I think the biggest thing is you can't lose faith. I think the confidence is what kind of continues and drives. So with that being said, this is just some of the stuff that we've done, beyond, opportunities with creating our own things. I mean, we've gotten YouTube collaborators with just random phone calls from, there's one with Nick DiGiovanni, who was the youngest winner of MasterChef, 7 million followers and hundreds of millions of views, and they just called us and said, hey, do you want to break a Guinness World Record with us? And we're like, how'd you get my number? He still never answered me, but to like design and desserts, and we opened a bar, and I've never even been a bartender before, and a lot of it was just, man, opportunity falls in, hey, do you want to flip this light switch? Screw it, let's flip it and find people to jump on with us. And we have, and I think over the years, these are all different people on my team, and I've had people now that are still with me after 10 years of me going, hey, I know you just graduated college, and you probably want a stable career, but you want to do this crazy thing with me? And they're still here, and we're still, and every day is still a new journey. We just opened up a taco shop. We've never done tacos before, but and we've done Cambodian sandwiches. We've opened a bar, and I think a lot of it is just this creativity and this spice. I think the biggest thing for us is we get bored with the same spice. We don't want to season everything with salt. So every little project we look at, we just find something new, we find something interesting. We have a lot of faith in one another, and we just go for it. But with that being said, I mean, like things like noodles, I've never made noodles before, but these are homemade like udon noodles that we did from scratch because I saw a place in Hawaii making their own, and I said, why not? Why don't we bring this here? And from that to like more high-end things, we have like a French technique, dauphinoise, and it's not that I've been classically French trained, it's I know how to use Google, and screw it, let's get some potatoes and cut it and make it, and make our friends come eat our food, and heck, like, let's sell it, let's go to the public, and that's been a lot of the story. It's, I think our journey, my journey, again, is just not being afraid of spice. I think just, even if it burns and it hurts, it's temporary. You're gonna recover from it, and not being fearful of trying a new spice and continuing to try new things. And that's really lended to where we are today. And now what's ironic is the consulting that I do is to hopefully prevent people from avoiding, from experiencing some of the more painful spices, being better prepared to not get sued and things of that nature. But at the same time, my style of consulting and letting people know is, I'm not going to tell you everything, because that's not fair. Because in this world, and entrepreneurship in general, you're never going to learn anything, you're never going to grow if you don't get burned a little bit. It's got to hurt sometime, and that's where you can persevere, because the pain might be there now, but man, it's going to feel good once you're looking back on it, because it's cliche, but it really does matter. These stories matter, the times of hardship, the adversity, because once you get past it and you look back on it, you kind of go, man, we got through that, and we can get through anything. Like, that was crazy, what's next? And I think that's really what's driven kind of me into my story today, where we're still exploring, where we still want to know, hey, what spices are out there? What have we not come across yet? What can we try? What can we continue to keep kind of pushing? I would love to kind of hear from the crowd a little bit on what it is, that, whether it's a dish or it's a project you've been thinking about, or a risk that you want to take, no matter how small, how big. I want to know what potential light switch is in front of you. So, any volunteers to go first?
So the dish I was thinking of is a vegetarian porridge. That I was born and raised by my grandma in Mekong Delta, and she vegetarian for like 40 years, and she always make me that dish. And I have made and create that dish many times for many friends. And now my next goal in life is turn it into something that profitable, sellable. I work in the restaurant industry for 4 years. Also the life switch from the office job to the restaurant world. And now I want to turn that dish to the vegan cafe, and that's in my life switch for the next one. And thank you for inspiration and all of the sharing and the knowledge you share with me today. It means a lot. Thank you.
wasn't trying it. I'm going to circle back to think about that dish that, I asked you to think about earlier. Have you ever made that dish before? Have you even attempted to make it before? Is it something that you just went, man, that was so good, I couldn't possibly do it? My challenge is, why not try it? Why not try going home and recreating it? You could completely screw up and it could hurt, but it would only be temporary. Or you could create something that's awesome, you can share it with your friends, and then you can kind of recreate that memory. It'll be a different memory because it'll never be as good as the first one, but it'll be fun. Try something new. It's, in my opinion, low risk unless that dish includes crazy peppers in there. But a lot of the restaurants, if you guys have heard of the Love Art brand, I am the founder behind it. Love Art Sushi. We are in across the river in Fenway. We have a location downtown. We have one by the TD Garden, Poke by Love Art. Seaport, Kokoda. We just opened a taco spot. It's just called Fish Taco, nice and simple. It's a hybrid. We do make our tortillas from scratch, so we're bringing something different to the North End. I know it's very Italian based. And the other venture we have is Cloud and Spirits. It's actually, I don't know if you guys have heard of it, it's 2 blocks away from here, and it's a private venue space, and that's where I get to have a lot of my fun. So we host all sorts of private events, from vintage swap meets to like Latin dance night, and we've done, Harvard Business School, like private dinners. So I have a wonderful bar team there. I occasionally go in and cook if we have a buyout, and that's where I get to like play around with a lot of recipes and try new spices, and still get amazed every day when I peek out and I'm like, oh, people are actually eating my food. This is cool. But and I mostly work out of my office is based in Somerville, so a lot of my clients are locally here in New England. I have some down in Connecticut, and I have other chefs and entrepreneurs here. But that is me in a nutshell. And my wife, who is not here today, again, she's kind of the engine and operations side. I work a lot on like the coaching, mentoring, and business model side, and marketing. So, but thank you so much for having me.